Today we've got a shorter but particularly important video to present to you. As I mentioned when I started this channel, and I told myself when I started this project, one of the main reasons that I am trying to explore and map and learn all I can about the astral, deep mind, and imaginary planes is because I know there's some pretty deep secrets in there, usually of a spiritual variety, but I'm sure there could be other kinds of secrets in there as well. And I knew that the more that I practiced my visionary, psychonaut visionary techniques, the more likely I was to encounter some of these secrets firsthand, for a number of reasons, one of which I get better with the visions as I practice them. I've also discovered that the more I practice, the more the visions come, and sometimes they come too much now, and that's becoming a bit of a worry, but I'm just going to have to deal with that because I put myself into this situation. But so far, it's fine. I don't have to be involved in a vision if I don't want to be. And the third of which is the astral plane, the deep mind, and the imaginary plane are very little studied, particularly from an occult perspective. In a perspective like mine, certainly shamans have been exploring these realms for a long time, and psychologists try to, and psychoanalysts and even psychiatrists try to understand these realms, but I think they do more to frame and control the realms than actually understand them. In almost all cases, I still like some of the work of Jung, like his Red Book, which I think is very much, what he went through in his Red Book was in many ways very similar to what I'm going through with my visions, but like I don't just have a Red Book of whatever number of visions he had. I'm having thousands and thousands and thousands of these visions, many per night. But I have pretty much uncovered my first significant secret now, and I feel I'll reveal it to my channel. And you know, there's not a lot of viewers on this channel, and they're all awesome, and I very much appreciate them all being here. And so you're all getting something that you're getting exposure to, a secret that a lot of people are not going to get because, you know, people don't necessarily know about my channel, and even if they do, a lot of times they don't decide not to subscribe. But you know, I'm a very underestimated person, and I really do know a lot about the occult and have a lot of occult experience going back a long time. But, you know, in a social sense, I'm not necessarily the most popular or known person by far, and I often don't try to be, because I sometimes operate a little better in a isolated, hostile environment, which I often find myself in, more so now than ever in my life. It's too much now, but that's beyond the point. But so here's a secret, and I've known this secret for a long time. It's just it was made crystal clear to me through this practice. And so let's see what that actual secret is after. So here's another look at, you know, an idealized picture of a shaman performing like shamanic visionary techniques and searching the astral planes and the spiritual planes thereby. So, what is the secret? The secret is related to the nature of knowledge and the deep mind and the astral plane, and it also goes higher than that. It goes to the spiritual planes, the deific planes, and the universal plane, the great universal plane. And basically, the term I've created to explain what the secret is it's called extra anthrogen knowledge, and that stands for extra anthro, aka human, genesis, so human-born knowledge. So it's knowledge born outside of the human, but at the same time it implies, in a way, I hope, the word implies that the knowledge originally, in many cases, came from a human. And what I'm saying there is that, in a summarized version, before I get to the actual details, is once knowledge gets past the memory, which is we can say the next level back from the conscious mind, and it will seep through there all the time, and it gets into the deeper mind and the subconscious and the unconscious and the deep mind and the astral plane. Knowledge filters back into your mind towards the universe, just like it can filter outwards towards the universe. Once it gets past the memory, knowledge is still stored in the mind, and not only that, it can be manipulated by the deeper portions of the mind, and it forms structures outside the detection of the conscious mind. Now, I learned this all And we'll see why that's really important in a minute. I learned this all as an automatic drawer, and so I've had a pretty potent form of automatic drawing that I've been using since, I don't know, I was like 23 or 24 years old when the pictures started coming out of me, and I've learned a lot in that time. And one of the things I've learned about automatic drawings, which is a way to access the mind and the planes and the astral planes and the spiritual planes behind the consciousness and the memory and the ego and all that, it's just a different way than these visionary techniques. And I learned a long time ago that the deeper mind has like separate sections in it where it's building up forms of knowledge entirely outside the reach of the conscious mind. And there could be many reasons for this. I think one of them is in order for that type of knowledge to build itself up in a mind in a very imperfect world, this higher level type knowledge, and it's not always higher level, it can be pretty base knowledge too, but I don't mean based as in cool, I mean base as in low. Perhaps contamination from the conscious mind would destroy the creation of this higher order knowledge, and that's why it's separated from the mind. The problem is, once it gets created, you have to figure out some kind of way to access that knowledge, or it'll never be of direct conscious use to you. It will certainly influence your deeper mind and all the manipulations that are going on in the different parts of your mind, and that's pretty important too. But it'll be better to show you what this works and how this works and why it's important through some charts. But just as a quick example, like I've known from my automatic drawings that you can access past and future events from your deep mind. You can learn knowledge that you had no way of knowing, terms. You can learn people's histories, elements of their past. You can look into your own past. You can look into your own future. You can look into, other dimensions. You can see deities, all that from automatic drawing. So I already know what's waiting in there. It's just I didn't realize until I started doing these visionary techniques that you could actually access this through visionary techniques too, and you could access it in a visual direct way where the parts are moving and part of scenes and scripts. But we'll have to talk about that more in a second. So here we go. So here's how I'm going to explain this to you. This is kind of a map, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just meant to be a general map. It may very well have lots of incorrect features and inconsistencies, but my point is to try to explain a concept. The mind really does work this way to a point, at least. You've got your consciousness there in the middle. That's what you're perceiving the world with, and I am too right now, and you do almost all the time. Below that, you've got your outer world, so your material world. And it's hard, really, technically, to even separate the material world from, like, the deeper mind, because they probably aren't separate, because influences in one can change the other, but we'll leave that out for the moment. Now, the outer world has lots of information that you could go out and actively seek and find. Information structures is what I call it. It's just any form of information that can form into structures too. Like an information structure could be a physical artifact out in the world, like a Mayan statue or a Mayan hieroglyphs, or anything like a math equation. So then you go back to your consciousness. All right, and then you've got your own information stored up in your mind, and the most directly and easily accessible information in your mind is in what's called the memory, or we call the memory. So there's information structures in your memory, and even that moves around and works with itself outside your conscious knowledge. Like, it's not static information. It's not just sitting there like in a drawer. It's interacting with other pieces of information that are always entering the memory from the conscious mind and creating new structures and more complex structures and mutating and all that. But everybody knows you can get knowledge from your memory. Now, sometimes you can get, as I go to this next page, I drew in light blue the consciousness and the areas that the conscious mind can access for information fairly easily in all humans. As you can see, it fully goes into the memory, and it goes into the outer world, except I didn't note that there, but obviously you can get information from the outer physical world. And it goes partially into even the subconscious mind. So if you really focus, you can get information out of your subconscious mind, because it's just barely below conscious. But that ability and power of a human pretty much stops there. You can't really consciously choose, unless you're using some kind of magical or occult technique, to access your unconscious mind and get the information stored within. It's even tougher to do that in your deep mind, even tougher to do that in the astral planes. And you see those ICs up there, that stands for information construct. And the reason why I wrote that there is to show that there are information constructs existing in the astral plane, just like there are in the memory, except they're information that's way beyond the ability of the consciousness to access under normal circumstances. Sorry, I'm getting over like COVID or some shit, like, so I'm a little different today. But also, if you look at that map, you'll see above the astral planes is the spiritual planes. And a very important thing to understand about this map too is an individual human basically stops at the end of the deep mind. That's where an individual's human mental structure ends. And yet it still connects to the astral plane. And that's because the astral plane actually exists outside and contains all human minds within it. So this is where it starts to get really interesting. So if you've got information constructs in your deep mind, that's kind of an individual thing. Although it will be influenced by the archetypes and the collective unconscious. But once you get to the astral plane, you're starting to get into what's called collective information constructs. Because the information is flowing out of the deep minds of every human, and even many types of beings that aren't humans. And it's all gathering in the astral plane where it's rearranging itself and finding a spot for itself and fighting with other information and morphing and mutating. And forming, in some cases, very complex information constructs. Even things like egregors, like we were talking about in the last video. And again, I hate that word. I wish there was a different word for it. Now, what happens, what the secret of the astral plane is, one of the very significant secrets of the astral plane, and it applies to the deep mind just as much as it does to the astral plane. So let's go to this next slide. Is when I do a shamanic visionary journey by closing my eyes and reading the dim patterns on the back of my closed eyelids and allowing those to expand out into full visions and then traveling within those visions, what I'm really doing is I'm traveling, which that's what those arrows represent, traveling out from my conscious mind through the memory, the subconscious, the unconscious, the deep mind, and into the astral plane. And sometimes farther and sometimes less far. Sometimes I'll only make it to the deep mind, sometimes I'll make it to the astral planes. Sometimes I'll get to the spirit planes. Sometimes I might even make it to the deific planes. And there's even a universal plane, the great universal plane above that. And there is literally the way information exists on things like the deep mind, the unconscious, and the astral plane is the nature of information itself changes. It isn't just a static thing like a piece of information or a mathematical formula. It becomes not only what it originally was, a piece of information or a mathematical formula or a symbol or a word, but it actually gets an embodiment and an expression once it hits about the unconscious mind. So when I uncover like a 3D movie script of a alien civilization or an alien world and beings moving around in it, it's many things at once. I'm not denying the reality of the astral civilizations as astral civilizations. They are that, but at the same time they are also direct representations of information constructs. It's very important because that means every vision I have or another person has of these deep areas of the mind up into the astral and the spiritual planes is actually encoded information constructs. And those information constructs, particularly when you get to the case of the astral plane, are coming from outside the self. So and then emerging and fighting with and mutating with other information from all the other beings on the earth and many other beings and spiritual beings and all sorts of things. And some of it's coming down even from the deific and universal plane. So when you get to the astral plane and you have a vision like I do of whatever it could be, an alien civilization, it's many things at once. It is that civilization. Those beings are beings. They do have some sort of free will. But at the same time, it's literally a communication or a message or a piece of information that in many cases I would have no access to, in most cases, absolutely no access to if I couldn't shamanically journey to that plane and see that information. Then you can grab that information, and if you can, in many cases, like in the case of divination systems, for instance, from the last video. I can just look at that, see it on the plane, remember it, bring it back to the earth, the material plane, and create it here. And now I've got an information system, a divination system, that I never would have had, or I never could have literally thought of consciously, right here, created on the earth, because I went deep into my own mind, found it, took it, brought it back, and built it. And that's the same thing applies for other things, technologies, ideas, cosmologies, philosophies, mathematical equations, secrets of the universe that come not only from other humans, but from every being that exists in the entire universe. It's out there merging and mixing on this, either the astral planes, the spiritual planes, the stellar planes might be a good name for the plane where all the beings in the universe, all their information goes. So you could literally find out how to build a new advanced technology that's never been seen before on the earth, simply by traveling deep into your mind, seeing that technology, trying to figure out how it works on the plane, and bringing it back here. And I already know this is real because I've seen it work. Now, technologies are really hard to build even on the earth, so it's not going to be easy to go into your deep mind and get a super advanced technology, bring it back, and actually know how to build it. But there will be stuff up there that you can build, and not only that, there'll be information structures and blueprints and teachings and histories of other worlds and your own world, and teachings about and visions of the beginning of the universe, and probably you can even get information from outside the universe, if there is such a thing, which I tend to think there has to be. That's one of the greatest secrets of the astral plane, and one of the greatest potential benefits of learning how to do this kind of psychonautic journey is, and that's kind of my goal with my traveling into the astral plane and beyond. And it's important to say "and beyond," and I'm going to start doing that in my videos. I'm going to start traveling to higher planes and things, or trying to, and bringing back real things and real knowledge and real technologies and philosophies and art and architecture that I see up there that's so amazing. It's just, the barrier is, how do I represent that in a way? Am I a good enough artist to draw the architecture? Am I a good enough technician to figure out how that technology actually works? I mean, it's much easier with things like beliefs and religious beliefs and deities and deity names, and even that's really valuable. But that's why it's so important to understand the values of this channel and what I'm doing, and what you all could do potentially if you learn how. It only takes doing this technique, and I'm terrible at visualization, and I always have been, and yet I have become really good at this technique. It's taken me a long time, but then again, I haven't been focused on it like I am now, so the process could go a lot faster for other people. But like last video was, not a powerful example of what I'm talking about, but I literally brought back 2 or 3 divination systems which I could create in the next week or two, even via software if I don't want to build it as a physical structure. And those items could be popular on the earth. Like, I would buy a spinning wheel, a triple spinning wheel divination system, like the Mayan looking one I saw and reproduced in my last video. That's a low level example, but the very fact that I can do that, combined with the fact that I'm not BSing, like, I'm actually having these visions. You're going to run into people at some point who are going to be copying this, who are going to be just faking. But that's not me. And if you knew my history, and if you watch enough of the videos, you can start to figure out my history. You'll know that I'm not faking this. Like, I'm not only an occultist, but I'm an occultist with a lot of history. And there's no faking here. Like, I've got no desire. Maybe there is a reason to fake, but I've got no desire to fake. And not only that, if I were faking, I'd lose interest in this so fast. Like, what makes this interesting and what makes me do it is the reality of it, and the realization that nobody else is really doing this in this way. Now, maybe by saying that, that's a bit of a generality, and particularly when you are talking to fellow occultists, there's a very good chance that you've got other people out there that are doing similar types of things. But my goals are really to bring back this kind of knowledge and information from the planes well above the earth and manifest them on the earth, hopefully for the benefit of myself, sure, but other people too. And the actual secret that a lot of people don't understand is these shamanic visions, their visions, and again, I've said this before, but I just want to repeat it again. The beings are real, but when information passes that subconscious barrier into the unconscious, the very nature of information changes, and in order for it to exist, it has to exist in the form of symbolic representations. And in a human, those are going to form things like civilizations and beings and deities and all these movie scripts, 3D immersive movie scripts that I see in my mind. Those are many things at once, but one of the things that they are is every one of those movie scripts could potentially be back engineered into the actual information construct that it is. It's teaching something there, and because the different information constructs on these deeper planes are mutating and merging amongst each other, they are creating new information, and new technologies are being created all the time on these higher planes, entirely outside the control of humans and human consciousness. And all of these informational structures and technologies and things built out of the informational structures can be seen, copied, and brought back to the earth. And one of the ways in which that can be done, besides automatic drawing, but automatic drawing really has a side effect that's very potent that a lot of people don't understand. Automatic drawing, when you pull that information back using an automatic drawing for whatever reason, probably because it's more direct and because it's an actual physical creation, there's other reasons, but oftentimes it will have a huge magical charge, and that's a weird thing about information. But remember, information ultimately at root is symbols, and all written language are ultimately at root, you can trace them back to the magical. There isn't an essential difference between the symbols of knowledge on our plane as there is on the deep spiritual plane. They both have like a sliding scale of being spiritual at one side and being just, like logical information on the other. But the nature of knowledge literally changes at the higher planes, and it embeds itself in symbols and complex symbolic symbols. And the more complex the symbolic symbols get, the more it starts to look like things like beings and civilizations and storylines playing out there. There's that first secret. Now, I've got other secrets, and I'm certain I will discover more, but it also gives you a good look at why I'm actually doing this channel, like in the deepest sense. So I hope you've all found that interesting, and hope you recognize the value of that information. I think some of you will, but if I just go out in public and say this on a street corner, I think maybe 0.5% of people would understand. Like, my whole life's kind of been like that. People don't get what I'm saying until it manifests, and I'll say things many, many years before they happen. So, thank you very much for watching the video, and have a good night.